Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles and on this episode we're doing a top 10. Topic of the top 10, SummerSlam Matches. We're almost roughly about a week and a half out from SummerSlam at the time of this recording. So I figured let's look back and see what I consider the 10 best matches in SummerSlam history. Now before I get into this, I will mention doing this list, there was one name that came up over and over again, and at the end of the video, we're going to name that person the official Mr. SummerSlam, much like Shawn Michaels is Mr. WrestleMania. So with that being said, let's jump right in. Our number 10, from SummerSlam 2005, a ladder match for the custody of Dominic Mysterio, Rey Mysterio versus Eddie Guerrero. Yes, I know the stipulation's goofy. Yes, I know it's not the greatest idea. However, the match itself is fantastic. I mean, you have Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio, two of the best workers of the last 3 decades now, and two of the wrestlers that were very close to being in their prime. This is probably right around Mysterio's prime and towards the edge of Eddie Guerrero's prime. Both of these guys were absolutely fantastic here. This was an amazing match with two guys that had awesome chemistry, going back to their time in WCW where they put on banger matches there as well. This is just a fantastic match, even though the stipulation and the gimmick are a little bit on the goofy side. Now our number 9. From SummerSlam 1990, in a 2 out of 3 falls match for the WWF Tag Team Championship, the Hart Foundation versus Demolition. This version of Demolition is Smash and Crush, with Axe serving as the quasi-manager. They were in a Freebird rule kind of thing here. A lot of people kind of gloss over this match and don't give it... they don't look back at this as being a really great match, where it really is. I hear a lot of people derive Demolition for being basically a knockoff of the Road Warriors. However, I do think Demolition carved their own path and carved their own niche. Yes, there were similarities, but I don't think they were the same. There was definitely a reason that in the era everybody wanted to see Demolition versus the Road Warriors, because both teams were so good and at what they did. It made it one of the dream matches. This was an absolutely phenomenal match. One of the real highlights of that era of the WWF or WWE now. I would definitely recommend go checking this out. Probably the least talked about match on this countdown, but still, in my opinion, one that definitely deserves to be here. Now our number 8, from SummerSlam 1998. The Undertaker versus Stone Cold Steve Austin. This is Steve Austin at the height of his popularity, at the height of his usefulness, against The Undertaker, who was slowly morphing into being one of the great wrestlers of all time. I've said it before, and even he said it. After Taker got into a feud with Mankind Mick Foley, everything after that is where his career really started to pick up, and he became more known for being a wrestler instead of just being a gimmick. This was a fantastic match, just an awesome main event for the show. Again, how can you go wrong when you have two of the all-time legends in pro wrestling, and two of the guys that if you probably made a WWF/WWE Mount Rushmore, these two faces would almost certainly be on there. Now, coming from that, our number 7, from the same SummerSlam, or SummerSlam 98, The Rock versus Triple H in a ladder match. To me, this was The Rock and Triple H going out and showing that they deserve to be in the main event, that they deserve to be that next generation. They were going to be the guys next in line. They were going to be the guys that took over the WWF and became champions very shortly, which they both did, and both went on to have very historic careers. I love this match. This match, at the time of watching it, when I talked to my friends the next day, this was the match we were most talking about. We did talk about Taker versus Austin because that was a great match too. But this match really stole the show from them. Even though, like I said, the other match it deserved to be on this list. It was another great match. This just was like, I want to say it was a coming out party, even though both of these guys were already firmly entrenched in the WWF at the time. This kind of showed that they were ready for that next step, which would come very shortly. Now, coming from that, just 1 year later, SummerSlam 1999, Mankind versus Triple H versus Stone Cold Steve Austin in a triple threat match for the WWF Championship with your special guest referee, Jesse the Body Ventura. This match was really good. Mankind and Triple H's chemistry is off the charts. Austin and Triple H as well. Austin and Mankind. So putting the three of them together, it really made something special because these were three guys that all worked well individually with each other as well as part of this three-way match. This match had everything you would want. It had the celebrity referee, which was Ventura. It had a great flow. It didn't feel clunky that it was a three-way. It didn't feel forced. It felt like what the natural evolution should be. And it made a really great match, in my opinion. Now, coming from that, our number 5. I have till 5, referee, which is very apropos. The newest match on this countdown from 2013, John Cena versus Daniel Bryan. This is one of the matches I point to when people say to me, John Cena can't wrestle. And I point to matches like this, where he's against Daniel Bryan. And yes, I know, it's Daniel Bryan, one of the great in-ring performers of all time. But it's not like John Cena's incompetent. John Cena holds his own with Daniel Bryan. And this was a really solid match. It's one of my favorite Cena matches, one of my favorite of Daniel Bryan's in WWE. I really enjoy this match. I thoroughly think it's awesome. Again, it's one I always point to when people say that John Cena can't wrestle. I say, have you seen this match? Which a lot of people have, but they seem to forget that he could do this. Now, coming from that, our number 4, probably the most hyped up and most celebrated SummerSlam match of all time, from 1992, Bret the Hitman Hart versus the British Bulldog for the Intercontinental Championship in Wembley Stadium. This was a spectacle. This was a SummerSlam that was on par with what WrestleMania was and would eventually become. The whole setting of it being in England, with the story between the brothers-in-law, Bret and Bulldog, and where Diana is going to stay on this. This was just a fantastic match. This is a perfect example of two faces going up against each other, and you don't necessarily have to turn one, but with a compelling storyline, you could get the wrestling fans to tune in and watch. Again, just an amazing match in my opinion, hence why it's up this far on the list. Now, number 3. From SummerSlam 2000, the first TLC match, Edge and Christian versus the Hardy Boys versus the Dudley Boys. This was the groundbreaker. This was the one that laid the template for everything they did after this. And you can even say that the Terry Invitational Tournament match between Edge and Christian and the Hardys before this laid the groundwork for this. This was the first official TLC match. This was the first time that this combination of the three teams, which are now intrinsically intertwined with each other, Edge and Christian, the Hardys, the Dudleys, you almost can't talk about one of the teams without talking about the other two, because they're so instrumental in each of their career. Each one of them have become legendary teams. All three are three of the top 10 greatest teams of all time, in my opinion. And it's just amazing going back and watching this. I do think their WrestleMania TLC 2 is a little bit better, but this is still fantastic. This is car crash craziness at its absolute best, in my opinion. Now, coming from that, our number 2. The Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels, versus Razor Ramon from SummerSlam 95 in a ladder match. This is their second ladder match after WrestleMania 10. And arguably, I would say that this is just as good, if not better. I thought this was a fantastic match. I mean, you got two of the best workers of the generation wrestling each other. This is one of the two matches, this and the one before, that really put the ladder match format on the national stage and made it something where it's used almost at random now. I mean, we have 3 other ladder matches, including TLC, on this card, which is basically a glorified ladder match with a little bit extra sprinkles. And this was one of the reasons why that became such a special match. The chemistry between Michaels and Razor Ramon is off the charts. I mean, they're really good friends in real life. Everybody knows they're the clique, blah, blah, blah. But these matches that they had were so outstanding in such a great way to introduce a new match format, almost like back when Dusty and the Four Horsemen were doing the original War Games matches, how that became so iconic because of the people involved. And just like I just said with the TLC matches, these guys made these matches and made it something where if you see a ladder match, you feel a little bit more, it has a little bit more importance, mostly because of what these guys did. Now, before we get into our number 1, we do a little something here called the best of the rest. Basically, matches that were thought of but didn't quite make the list. First up, Bret the Hitman Hart versus Mr. Perfect from I keep saying WrestleMania, I don't know why. From SummerSlam 1991 for the Intercontinental title. This, a lot of people point back to this as the point that Bret Hart went from part of the Hart Foundation to being a real solo star on his own. The trajectory was always there. Mr. Perfect is a great wrestler. They made each other look like $1 million, much like I said with Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon. You have two of the great workers of their generation here working this match together, much like Eddie Guerrero and Mysterio previously. This was just a fantastic match and another great showing for SummerSlam. Just another one of the matches that are so iconic with the show. Now, next up on the best of the rest, from SummerSlam 1996, Undertaker vs. Mankind in the Boiler Room Brawl. I may be on the short list of people that love this match. A lot of people like it but don't love it. I like the psychology of this. I like the swerve at the ending, which I'm not going to say just in case you haven't seen it. Chances are you already have if you're watching a video like this, though. But I'm still not, if you noticed, I haven't mentioned any of the results of these. I don't want to spoil it for anybody that may not have. But this was just a fantastic match. Like I said a little bit earlier, the Undertaker-Mankind feud really served to elevate The Undertaker. Also elevated Mankind, where Mankind felt special because of the way him and The Undertaker interacted with each other. It felt like that Mankind had just as much chance to beat The Undertaker as Undertaker had chances to beat Mankind. And their feud was amazing. I love this match, hence why it was considered for the list. Now, before we get into our number 1, if you think I put something too high, put something too low, left a match off altogether, let me know what you think down here in the comments. While you're there, smash that like button, hit subscribe, share the video. And with all that being said, our number 1 SummerSlam match, Bret the Hitman Hart versus Owen Hart from SummerSlam 94 in the steel cage. And this was the big blue cage, the cage that a lot of people dislike. I think this is one of, if not the best match in the Big Blue Cage. I love this match. I think this is, much like I said with Razor and Michaels a little bit ago, this match, to me, is just as good and maybe even better than their WrestleMania 10 match, which is one of my favorite WrestleMania matches of all time. I really love this feud. I think it's one of the greatest feuds in the history of wrestling. I love the story. Everybody who has siblings knows where Owen Hart is coming from. Even if you thought he was a heel, even if you didn't like what he was saying, you understood why he was saying it and where he was coming from. And that, to me, really made these matches special. And you had, again, two fantastic wrestlers. Owen and Bret here are just outstanding. This is a fantastic match. I would definitely recommend, if you have not seen it, go back and watch this match because it's amazing. Now, with all that being said, I mentioned in the beginning of the show that I was going to crown someone Mr. SummerSlam, even though I have no one's going to get an award or anything. It's just me saying that. But looking at this, if you take into account the best of the rest, we have 4 different matches that involve one guy, and that is Bret the Hitman Hart. So a third of the 12 matches we talked about here have Bret Hart in. Undertaker's in 2. Mankind's in 3. To me, looking back at this and the quality and the fact that his match is number 1, Bret the Hitman Hart is Mr. SummerSlam in my opinion. I mean, he got everything from his Hart Foundation match with the Demolition, to his feud with Owen Hart, to him versus the Bulldog. Everything he did, I mean, he is the best there is, the best there was, the best there ever will be. And I really think that SummerSlam was a show to show that. Now, with that being said, again, you think I left something too high, put something too low, left the match off altogether, hit me up in the comments. And if you made it all the way to the end here, let's put a Hitman in the comments for Bret the Hitman Hart. My name is George Coles, and this is my top 10 SummerSlam matches.